Welcome back this week for Guns Explained. I'm Jordan Mitchell, here with our guest panel for the month of January, Keith Jenkins, Sergeant with the West Jordan Police Department, and Rich Montanez, the Program Director for Salt Lake Community College. We're going to talk about how to stay safe off duty as a law enforcement officer this week. So first off, gentlemen, what kind of things do officers need to keep in mind between on duty and off duty?
Being off duty, we've kind of talked in previous segments a little bit, but as an officer, you end up kind of code switching between how you are as an officer and the vigilance you have and being prepared to keep safe and the mindset that it requires there, and then being at home where you can kind of relax a little bit, turn things off. You can't fully, at least I have a hard time being not fully aware, but if you're that hyper vigilant all the time, it's going to cause problems with your relationship and your family and not being able to relax. So well, it's hard to be off, just recognizing that I'm going to be in a different state of mind usually when I'm off duty with my family as I am at work, and that's a healthy thing, but it does have something to do with your preparedness and your ability to engage when you're off duty if there's something that you feel you need to engage in.
That's got to be really hard to keep that balance, flip that switch just on a dime too. I mean, I know that as I'm driving home all the time, I'm getting phone calls and I'm hearing what's going on in 1,000 different scenarios. What do you guys have to do to decompress after a long day?
For everyone it's different. I like to, read or spend time with my family, work in the yard. I enjoy yard work and being out in the yard. I know some people are probably cringing right now, but for me that's what works, and so for everyone it's a little different, and I enjoy spending time with my kids. I try to find things to do that have nothing to do with law enforcement. I enjoy firearms and shooting, and so I'll do competition that, but I like finding stuff that has nothing to do with law enforcement or what I'm doing that's something completely different that I can be good at or enjoy that's separate from my work life.
That's awesome.
So, and also one of the things we do as law enforcement officers is we tend to hang around with other police officers all the time. Sometimes it's nice to have friends who are not into law enforcement so we can break away from that mindset of always being in a police mode. Helps you relax a little bit better.
Yeah, I mean, we're always talking shop here, it seems like, whenever we get together outside of work.
One of the things we do in the academy too is when they come to the academy, we have a class called off-duty response. They all have to go through. They go through several different scenarios in plain clothes as if they were off duty.
What's different?
About
the scenarios.
The mindset's different. Also, the clothing's different. You're in an environment where you're a regular citizen versus enforcing the laws. So you may be out at a restaurant, and you may not have all your equipment either. There's a certain equipment that when you're off duty that you probably don't carry. For instance, a radio you don't carry. Sometimes we'll carry the minimal amount of stuff, like maybe a weapon and maybe just a magazine, and you may need more than that. The other thing we want them to understand is when you're in that kind of an environment, sometimes it's better not to get involved with it. It's better to be just a good witness instead of getting involved. Several reasons for that. Number one, you're not prepared. Sometimes you're not in the mindset. And number two is you're a civilian. People don't even know who you are when you're intervening. Even though you may say, I'm a law enforcement, you're in civilian clothing. People may not know who you are. So some of the things you want to do is contact local law enforcement first, identify yourself that I am a law enforcement officer in a store, this has taken place, and this is what I'm dressed in. That way when they arrive, they know there's an off-duty officer inside there versus a civilian, because when law enforcement arrives, they don't know who is who. And that can be very dangerous also for you as an off-duty officer if you're not identifiable.
I believe it. There's a lot of reasons you got to be safe in that situation.
The other thing is when law enforcement officers arrive, to comply with what they have you do. If they have you, they have no idea who you are. If they have you lay down, prone out, drop the weapon, whatever, you follow their instructions just like anybody else.
I believe
you can identify yourself when everything's under control.
Yeah. So have you guys ever run into a situation where you've had to work when you're technically off duty?
Yeah, my son plays soccer, so there's been times when parents get a little heated and you're sitting there watching and go, I might have to intervene. Fortunately, not too much in that case, but sometimes I've had people break into cars in your neighborhood, or I've had people that were intoxicated or doing burglaries crash out in front of your house. some of those times where you kind of have to deal with it. I was getting ready for work one day and I had 4 kids try to break into my house while I was at home. Fortunately, in that case, I was more prepared because I was getting ready for work, so I was in uniform and able to call. But even at that point, it's still a different situation when it's your home, you're involved. So I'm no longer an independent party. I'm no longer, kind of that impartial third party that officers should be most of the time. I'm actually involved in the case. It's my property. It's my family, or those, my neighbors, people I directly know, and that can affect how where your mindset is or what you're prepared for.
If you're out with your family just grocery shopping or something like that, that's going to change the scenario a ton.
Certainly. And that's the importance of preparing your family for that. So those kind of talks that you have to have with your family about how are we going to handle this if we come across someone that I've arrested before that may recognize you, and that can happen, and they might give you a handshake and say things are great, or they might be upset and start a confrontation, and wherever that may go. And certainly you don't want your family involved in that situation. So having those conversations with your family, or how to be a good witness, most of the time in your department we'll have policies that will help guide you on that. But for the most part, unless there's an imminent threat to someone's life and safety, even property, you can waive, but unless there's that imminent threat to life and safety, for the most part, be a good witness, call the authorities. You have the experience to be a great witness, to stay calm and kind of direct things, and you just really don't typically have the tools and resources. Even if you have the mindset and the skill set, you typically don't have the tools and resources that you would, and it can become a dangerous situation. So for the most part, we recommend just be a good witness and take care of your family.
Yeah.
Some law enforcement agencies also allow their officers to use their vehicles off duty. When you do use your vehicle off duty, there's a policy and procedure you have to follow, and that is specific equipment you must have in your possession. Also, if you're in your vehicle and you stumble upon an accident or some kind of an incident, you have to respond until a uniformed officer gets there, and then you can turn it over to them. So they got to be also prepared and follow their policy and procedures of their departments when you're using your vehicle off duty.
Yeah. And just like a lot of the scenario-based training that both of you do, both within the department and in the post-certification, it's all about making those decisions beforehand so you know how you're going to respond. Any good way to start those dialogues within your family to make those decisions preemptively and make sure that everybody's on the same page?
Really, it starts right off from the beginning. When you go through, a lot of times because they do that in the academy and they have that, it's a good time to go home and say, hey, just so you know, sometimes not, this is what we might have to deal with, and we had a class today and talk on it, and that's a great starting point to have it. For some reason you've gotten to the point, or maybe you don't get married or girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever you have, until after you become start law enforcement. Those are some of the conversations you're going to have and say, hey, in addition to the other things that probably dating me and my other deficiencies, here's another challenge you're taking on by dating me, so or marrying. And they're usually simple discussions, and most people by that point kind of, by the time you're far enough in a relationship to have those conversations, kind of understand at least a little bit what they're getting into.
Yeah, good communication. Excellent. Gentlemen, thank you as always for coming to join us. For Guns Explained this week, I'm Jordan Mitchell. We'll see you again next week.